What's going on, Low Gang? Welcome back to another absolutely crummy vid. Today, we're doing a tune-up on Dory, basic tune-up under $100, and I want to find out if replacing a few things here and there on an older car can make up some of the horsepower that it's lost over the years. This is a bit of a tall order because increasing horsepower in any car is typically pretty difficult, but I have a couple theories about maybe some things that need to be replaced on Dory that might net us a little extra torque. And who doesn't like a little extra torque once in a while? First things first, let's talk about the parts that we got. Okay, so here's what we're working with today. Starting with the basics, we have an oil change from FCP Euro. I'm gonna be running what I have been running, which is 5W40. Liqui-Moly, it's been working great. And since I got it from FCP Euro, I can put the old oil in these jugs, send it back, and get new free oil. That's not even a joke. And this is not supported by FCP Euro. It's just cool that they do that. Of course, with any oil change, you have your oil filter, also the filter housing cover O-ring things. Those are important to change every time so you don't get any leaks or weird stuff going on. I also have some ATF. I'm gonna see how our transmission fluid level is doing. While I have the car up in the air, I might as well check that and make sure everything's good to go. And for whatever reason, in case you're wondering, Dory has a 5-speed ZF. She doesn't have an automatic transmission, but for whatever reason, BMW likes to use ATF for like everything, including like power steering fluid. It's weird. So that's why I have ATF and not a regular MTF. Then up here we have two relatively inexpensive things that I hope will make a big difference. Number one is the fuel filter. If I can get it out of the frickin' box. Come on, there we go. So this is the main fuel filter. It goes approximately right there underneath the car. I am not sure the last time that this was replaced. I've never personally replaced it, so it's possible it's been a really long time. And it's one of those things that's actually really inexpensive to replace. This cost about, I think, $20 and should be done relatively frequently, but a lot of people do not update them as frequently as they should just because, you know, until something goes wrong, people don't think to get under there and change it. So I'm hoping this helps with a smoother idle, possibly better top end if there's better fuel flow. My vague theory is that maybe Dory isn't flowing quite as much fuel as she could, and so replacing the filter is just, I think, a good idea. Okay, and then here is, I think what'll make the big difference. This is a camshaft position sensor. This works in tandem with the Vanos solenoid and the Vanos on Dory to change the cam timing and get you the most torque in your mid-range from like 2,000 to 3,000 RPM. I also have a bunch of extra O-rings that go right there. They should be replaced every time you swap this out. Now here's the thing. Dory doesn't have any check engine lights right now. She actually has never had any check engine lights in the time that I've owned her. But that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing is wrong. And my buddy Sage told me that he has had 2 of these go out and never got a check engine light. For whatever reason, sometimes it doesn't throw a check engine light, and you could be missing out on a ton of torque and a ton of power, or in extreme cases, your car literally just shuts off. Now, just because there's no check engine light doesn't necessarily mean there's nothing funky going on in the engine's computer. And that's where this comes in. TopDon reached out to me about sending me some stuff to try out, and they very graciously agreed to send out this, which is their E36's. It's a full diagnostic tool. You can read everything about the car. You can dig into how each sensor is doing. You can reset the brake lights, the check engine lights, all of that. So what I'm gonna be doing today is using this to try to see if we have any pending codes, as in a code that hasn't thrown a check engine light but is kind of floating around in the DME somewhere. And even if there aren't any pending lights, we can use this to kind of dig in and see if any sensors are throwing some weird readings or anything like that. I'll see if I can get any information on how the cam position sensor is doing, because for some people it shows up as a bunch of random readings on a graph, which means obviously the sensor isn't reading consistently. Okay, I think first order of business is to dig in with the TopDon reader, see if we can find anything funny going on, and then I think we'll start with the fuel filter no matter what we find, because that needs to be done no matter what. And then I guess we'll just play it by ear. We'll see what happens. Okay, so surprise, surprise, there were no codes, no pending codes, nothing like that. Now I'm setting up live data view, so hopefully I can get some information on how the cam position sensor is reading, if anything funky is going on. So I basically just went to live data read, and then I think I'm gonna go down to, I think ignition timing advance for #1 cylinder. That has to do with timing, so that feels like maybe we'd get something out of that. I'm also gonna check our O2 sensors, because those are very common to go out on E36's, and if they go out, they can result in some sort of like torque loss, things like that. So might as well see how they're doing. And just for fun, let's do engine RPM, because that's kind of fun. Okay, I'm gonna hit OK. Okay, it just took a second to load. Looks like engine RPM is reading just fine. 2 of our O2 sensors are reading a little bit high, so there might be something going on. Luckily, O2 sensors aren't like crazy expensive. Maybe it's worth looking into those. No check engine light yet, but it's kind of cool that it highlights it in red, because now I know. Okay, ignition timing advance for #1 cylinder, which again, I'm not entirely sure that's the right thing. It seems about right. It seems smack dab in the middle of the range, which it probably should be. So maybe that's not the issue. Maybe we don't even need to do that today. I think we're done here, so I'm just gonna go back home, hit OK. Okay, got it. This is an interesting turn of events. Maybe the tune-up should have included O2 sensors rather than that cam position sensor. But we have it. I don't know, I'll play it by ear. First thing, let's do the fuel filter, then we'll figure out what we're gonna do. Okay, I forgot something. Before we go any further, I gotta depressurize the fuel system, because I'd rather not get covered in gas right now. I believe the fuse for the fuel pump is that blue one, so I'm just gonna, come on buddy, there we go. We'll put him aside for safekeeping. I almost feel bad doing this to Dory, but I gotta start it up, wait for the car to die. We just gotta do it. I'm sorry, Dory. All right, let's keep going. Okay, I am almost done. I haven't put the cover back on yet because I want to check for leaks, and it's going to be much more difficult to check for leaks once I have that cover all on there, and if there are any leaks, it'll be much more difficult to fix them. So I'm going to pop in the fuse. I believe it approximately goes right here. Boom. Okay, now it is time to start it up, and hopefully nothing explodes. I think I put it in the right direction. Let's see if it works. I think we're good. Okay, yeah. All right, welcome back. New day, new project. I got the front end of Dory lifted up here because the next order of business is to change the oil. Look at these, by the way. They've been holding up great. They're growing on me. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's kind of cool. We make a V-brace for an E36. Okay, while I let Dory cool down a bit, because I just drove her, so the oil is like boiling hot, I want to show you the fuel filter that we just pulled out. Okay, so here it is sitting in our drain pan. I just wanted to let the gasoline evaporate so I didn't dispose of it poorly. But here is the fuel filter, and I have some disturbing news. I think this might be original. I think this might be possibly a 187,000 mile fuel filter. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to replace them every like 30K. Someone chime in. As far as I know, this is the OEM one, and judging by some of the pitting on the aluminum, it looks pretty old. I haven't driven Dory a whole lot because I want to get the full genuine reaction of all of the tune-up stuff all together and see how that affects the drivability of Dory. But so far, the fuel filter made a big difference. I don't know how big of a difference because I haven't really romped on it at all, but just in coming away from stop signs, general throttle response, smoothness of the idle, it definitely feels better. So if you get one thing from this video, maybe it's that you should replace your fuel filter more than once per 200,000 miles. Okay, I'm gonna repurpose our drain pan for the oil drain. We're all up up on jack stands. We got 4 jack stands for safety, and I think we're ready to go. Let's change this oil. Hey fellas, it's been a couple days. Whole tune-up is done, everything's done. Let's go into GoPro mode and talk about what we did and if it worked. Okay, real quick for the record, if you have a GoPro, this is not safe. Okay, so regarding the tune-up, real quick, we did everything on our list except for that cam position sensor. And I only ended up not doing that because according to the 8600 that Top Don sent me, the sensor was reading like spot on. It wasn't jumping all over the place or anything weird like that. And in order to get to that sensor, you gotta undo the Vanos oil feed line. And then I'd have to replace both the crush washers because you have to do that every time you work on that oil line. And that's a whole pain in the rump. Also, now because I know the sensor is fine, I get to send that one back to FCP Euro and get my money back. That's kind of neat. But everything else in the tune-up we did, and the burning question is, did I gain back any lost horsepower? I will say from my, admittedly unrefined butt dyno, that, drumroll please, yes, it helped a lot. The only thing that actually had to do with power that I did was that fuel filter that you saw me replace. And it may not seem like it would have made that much of a difference, but it was something that I totally overlooked so far in my ownership of this car. And turns out it had been in the car for way too long. So undoubtedly it was completely clogged up. It wasn't letting enough fuel through. And I think that led to a lot of that mid-range torque dip that I was feeling. Now, a lot of that torque dip we worked out when we replaced the Vanos seals. Did a whole video on that. You can watch that if you want. That addressed most of that mid-range torque issue. And I would say if you have an E36 and you're seeing a ton of dip in torque right in the 2,000 to 3,500 RPM range, maybe think about your Vanos seals, especially if you're getting a rattle. But once you've done that, and maybe this is kind of the point of the video, it's worth going through the little maintenance things that you often overlook, because altogether, once you do all of that at once, it's going to help bring back the power that your engine was supposed to produce when it was perfectly new from the factory. A good example of this would be making sure you have no vacuum leaks. Vacuum leaks can wreak havoc and they're really hard to track down. Luckily, most of the stuff under Dory's hood is pretty new, and I've checked pretty extensively for cracks. Early on in my ownership experience, that changed how Dory drove drastically. When I got Dory, she idled weird, she was way down on power, all of that stuff, but once I addressed all of the vacuum leaks and started doing those little things here and there, all of a sudden I realized she had way more power than I initially thought she did. Okay, I gotta get out from behind this bus. This is ridiculous. We are going like 20 miles an hour. Okay, I'm a big supporter of public transportation, except when I'm driving behind it. No, that's a bad idea. Okay, I'm just gonna turn around. Okay, so speaking of Dory's increase in power, let's talk about what changed. So, like I mentioned, between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM, that's always been kind of the problem spot for Dory. First off, the Vanos seals sucked. I also had a bunch of vacuum leaks, and obviously the fuel filter was impacting it because now there's a lot more what I would call like eagerness to accelerate, which Dory, Dory's not a particularly fast car, not a ton of horsepower, but there is now this kind of added level of excitement, and the engine doesn't feel like it's kind of straining in that critical mid-range torque area. It certainly feels like it accelerates faster, and I can effectively short shift it a little bit easier and get away with it. You know, there's more leeway. It's not like I'm missing a bunch of torque down low. You know, if our theory is correct and this was the original fuel filter, that means it was probably really clogged up. And so the engine wasn't getting quite as much fuel as it could have and was presumably a little bit lean in those mid-range areas. It just feels a ton healthier. Hold on. That's enough of that. I'm around other cars. I guess moral of the story, and probably it's really basic, and you probably already know this, but if you're driving around your cool modified car, whatever you drive, and you're like, wish my car was faster, it might be worth going through kind of a really, admittedly boring checklist of maintenance items that might be robbing you of some horsepower that you have under the hood already. Why not maximize that before you go and spend a ton of money on, like, I don't know, cams? Like, especially for older naturally aspirated engines, don't go trying to like add forced induction to your car or something like that before you've done all of the little things, because you might have more horsepower than you realize. Obviously, things like changing the oil and changing the transmission fluid, those aren't going to net you like extra horsepower. However, at least for me, it makes me a lot more confident when I'm driving the car hard. Like if I'm driving around with like 12,000 mile oil in my engine, I'm probably not going to be comfortable like really going for it. And so it's almost like I'm getting additional performance because I feel more comfortable pushing the car a little bit harder. Anyway, I know this was kind of a long video of me doing really basic stuff on Dory, but I like making these types of videos because sometimes it's fun to just do the basic stuff and come out of the other end with a car that drives better. I think that's it for today's video. If you like the video, make sure to like the video. If you really like the video, make sure to subscribe. I make a new video every single week. Thank you so much for spending your time watching this video, and I will see you next time. Peace! Wait, hold on. One last little baby pull, just to wrap up the video. That's oh Jesus, that's enough. That's enough for, okay, that's enough, Dory. Thanks for watching. See you later.